It was indeed a big day today for both Palestinians and Israelis as the second round of the exchange of Palestinian hostages with Israeli prisoners of war took place successfully. Hamas released 4 female Israeli soldiers. In exchange, 200 Palestinian hostages were released from Israeli concentration camps. Hamas then released this video of the 4 Israeli prisoners of war.
السلام عليكم مرحبا شكرا لكتابك السامة لكل المعاملة الكويسة
شكرا للأكل والشرب والملابس
شكرا للشباب اللي كانوا يحفظوا علينا ودير بالو علينا من كاسف
وإن شاء الله يكون الكل يوم سعيد وأحسن يوم وكلنا نكون بخير
يوم 25/1/25.
You will have to compare the condition of the Israeli soldiers with those Palestinians who were released today. While Israeli women looked clean, healthy, well-fed and happy as they flaunted their goodie bags as if they had turned up at the graduation ceremony, Palestinians coming out of Israeli concentration camps looked malnourished and weak as if they had been denied food and routinely tortured by Israeli terrorists. While Israeli soldiers were seen jumping with joy as they got reunited with their loved ones, Palestinians could barely walk. But this is not the impression you would get if you accidentally watched Yolande Nell from the BBC and her report on BBC News TV channel. Let's look at her report to truly understand the professional dishonesty by this BBC representative. You know, I don't call them reporters or journalists. They are representatives representing their propaganda outlet.
By Hamas, its fighters lining up among the ruins in Gaza City. And then, with the Red Cross ready and waiting, the first glimpse of the Israeli soldiers after 15 months in captivity. In army uniforms. Karina Ariev, Daniela Gulboa, Nama Levy, all aged 20, and Liri Albag, now aged 19. All 4 apparently in good physical health.
So she said all 4 apparently in good physical health. She had to use the word apparently to cast a doubt in her viewer's mind. Apparently, maybe what was being broadcast on the BBC was an AI-generated video? Wonder why she didn't use apparently while describing Hamas fighters in that video. How was she so sure that they were indeed Hamas fighters? Anyway, Yolande Nell didn't stop here. Just to make sure that those watching the BBC were completely misled and didn't form any positive opinion about Hamas, she said this in the same report.
With foreign reporters currently unable to enter Gaza, we're relying on footage filmed by local journalists.
The question is, who is stopping this so-called journalist from entering Gaza? Who has banned the entry of independent journalists into Gaza? Hamas? Islamic Jihad? Palestinian Authority, or BBC's own ideological head Benjamin Netanyahu, wanted by International Criminal Court for war crimes? Why did Yolande Nell not say this? Surely, with her contact and access to the Israeli government, she would have been able to travel to Gaza City within few minutes and see firsthand if those Israeli soldiers were indeed in good condition or if they were apparently healthy. Apparently. Her own report had an Israeli guest confirming that Israeli soldiers were in good condition. He was, however, concerned about potential damage to their souls.
And among Israelis watching in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, there were cheers as events in Gaza's Palestine Square unfolded.
The body language is positive. I must say, what seems at first sight a good appearance does not necessarily say what's going on inside the body, inside the soul.
Why did Yolande Nell not watch her own channel's broadcast, which confirmed that Israeli soldiers released from Hamas captivity were in extremely good condition? This is what the BBC showed during its non-stop broadcast on the release of Israeli soldiers. By the way, there was no such blow-by-blow coverage to the release of Palestinian hostages from Israeli concentration camps. That's because Arab Palestinians do not have the same white skin as Israelis, and that's a deciding factor for the BBC. But Yolande Nell wasn't done yet. Before she ended her report, she had to make sure one more time that Israelis were projected as perennial victims. So what if 4 soldiers were released in good condition? So she had to say that Israelis were still anxious as dozens were still being held by Hamas.
Among the crowd, many are still anxious.
Everywhere here, there are signs, reminders of the dozens of Israelis still held captive in Gaza. It's not clear who's alive and who's dead.
Now you understand why this woman has always faced criticism or condemnation for her questionable reporting on the current Gaza conflict. But this has made no difference to BBC bosses. While Yolande Nell kept raising questions on the condition of Israeli soldiers, even when they looked incredibly happy, clean and healthy, one BBC reporter assigned to cover the release of Palestinian hostages highlighted the horrible conditions under which Palestinians had been kept inside Israeli concentration camps. While Israelis left the Hamas captivity in brand new military fatigues, Palestinians were seen wearing the prison uniform and looked malnourished. What John Donison explained the scene for the BBC. By the way, John was cut off abruptly by the BBC just when he was explaining how today's development will help Hamas project themselves as the real leader of Palestinians.
Well, you can see the 3 prison buses behind me. About 20 minutes ago, those buses arrived, and frankly, pretty chaotic scenes as the prisoners got off. A very large crowd, and we saw the prisoners in their grey prison fatigues, many of them with shaved heads, long beards, a lot of them looking pretty thin, it has to be said, hoisted onto the shoulders, carried into the sports complex behind me. You can just see one now emerging there. Man in his 40s, I'd say, maybe his 50s, being carried out with a shaven head. And when they arrived, you know, the scramble to get to their loved ones. I just saw one prisoner coming out on the shoulders, and what looked to be his young son was hoisted up and put into his arms. They will be allowed to return to their families, their homes in the West Bank. Many of them have been in prison for years, and it's really a big moment for Palestinians here. The prisoner issue is a massive one. Most families in the West Bank will have had a family member or a friend who's been held in Israeli prison at some point. And, you know, these images today, it has to be said, Hamas will make hay from them, because they'll say, look, we are the force that is getting our prisoners out.
Our correspondent John Donison in Ramallah. Well,
all in all, this wasn't a great day for the BBC. As I said before, the Gaza conflict has truly unmasked this British public broadcaster. With the amount of journalistic dishonesty that BBC representatives indulge in on a daily basis, I will have to upload dozens of videos every day just to call out their lies. Anyway, I will leave it here. Thank you so much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. The details are there in the description of the video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.